Maria Santos was born on a cold winter morning in Barcelona, Spain. She came into the world without sight, but her family loved her deeply. Her parents, Carlos and Isabella, were simple people who worked hard to make ends meet. Carlos fixed bicycles in a small shop, and Isabella cleaned houses for wealthy families in the city. When Maria was 5 years old, tragedy struck their family. Her parents died in a car accident during a heavy rainstorm. The little girl was left alone in the world. Except for her grandmother Elena. Elena was 65 years old and owned a small bakery on a busy street. She took Maria in without a second thought. Life was not easy for Elena and Maria. The bakery made just enough money to pay for rent and food. Elena worked from early morning until late at night, making bread and pastries for the neighborhood. Maria learned to help in small ways. She could not see, but she could smell when the bread was ready and feel when the oven was too hot. The apartment above the bakery was tiny. It had one bedroom, a small kitchen, and a living room with an old sofa and a television that barely worked. But Maria did not mind. She was happy to have her grandmother's love and care. Every morning, Maria would wake up to the sounds of the city. She heard cars honking, people talking, and the church bells ringing. The bakery customers would come and go, and Maria learned to recognize their voices. Mrs. Rodriguez always asked for 2 loaves of white bread. Mr. Garcia liked the sweet rolls. The young mother with 3 children always bought day-old pastries because they were cheaper. Maria's world was full of sounds and smells. She could tell when it was going to rain by the way the air felt. She knew when her grandmother was sad, because Elena would hum different songs. When Elena was happy, she would sing loudly while kneading dough. One day, when Maria was 7, Elena took her to the community center down the street. The center had activities for children after school. Elena hoped Maria could make friends and learn new things. The community center was a busy place. Children ran around playing games and doing homework. There were art classes and sports activities. But what caught Maria's attention was something else entirely. In the corner of the main room sat an old piano. It was brown and scratched, with some keys that stuck when pressed. Someone had donated it years ago, but most children ignored it. They preferred computers and video games. Maria walked slowly toward the piano. She had never seen one before, but she had heard piano music on the radio. She loved how it sounded, like water flowing or birds singing. She reached out carefully and touched the keys. The first note she pressed was soft and sweet. She pressed another key, then another. Each key made a different sound, some high and some low. Maria smiled. She had found something magical. From that day on, Maria spent every afternoon at the community center. While other children played games, she sat at the piano. She pressed different keys and listened to the sounds they made. She began to understand which keys sounded good together and which ones did not. Elena noticed that Maria seemed happier. She would come home from the center humming little tunes. At night, she would tap rhythms on the table with her fingers. Elena was pleased to see her granddaughter so interested in something. After a few weeks, Maria began to play simple songs. She had heard them on the radio and slowly figured out how to make the same sounds on the piano. She made mistakes, but she kept trying. Her ears were very good at hearing the difference between right and wrong notes. The other children at the center started to notice. They would stop their games and listen when Maria played. Some of them asked her to play songs they knew. Maria would listen carefully and then try to play what they wanted. Mrs. Fernandez, who ran the community center, was amazed. She had never seen a child learn to play piano without lessons. Maria could not read music because she could not see, but she could play by ear better than many students who had taken lessons for years. One afternoon, Senator Rodriguez came to the center. He was a music teacher at the local school, and Mrs. Fernandez had asked him to listen to Maria play. Senator Rodriguez was an old man with gray hair and kind eyes. He had taught music for 40 years and had seen many talented students. Maria did not know that Senator Rodriguez was watching. She was playing a song she had heard on the radio that morning. Her small fingers moved across the keys with surprising skill. She added her own touches to the melody, making it more beautiful than the original. When Maria finished, Senor Rodriguez was quiet for a long moment. Then he walked over to the piano and sat down beside her. "That was beautiful," he said softly. "How long have you been playing?" Maria turned toward his voice. "I started 2 months ago," she said. "I just like the sounds." Senor Rodriguez played a simple melody on the piano. "Can you play this back to me?" he asked. Maria listened carefully. When he finished, she played the same melody perfectly. Then she played it again, but this time she made it sound even better by adding her own style. Senor Rodriguez was amazed. In 40 years of teaching, he had never met a child with such natural talent. This little blind girl had something special, something that could not be taught in any classroom. He asked Maria to play another song. She played a lullaby that Elena sang to her at bedtime. As she played, everyone in the community center stopped what they were doing and listened. The music was so beautiful that some people had tears in their eyes. That evening, Senor Rodriguez went to the bakery to talk to Elena. He found her cleaning up after a long day of work. "I need to talk to you about Maria," he said. "She has an extraordinary gift for music." Elena looked worried. "Is she causing trouble at the center?" No, Senor Rodriguez said quickly. "She is amazing. She can play piano better than students who have studied for years, but she needs proper training. She needs to learn from a real teacher." Elena's face fell. "We have no money for music lessons," she said sadly. "I can barely pay for food and rent." Senor Rodriguez had expected this. Most of the families in the neighborhood struggled with money. But he had an idea. "I would like to teach her myself," he said. "I will not charge you anything. Maria has too much talent to waste. She could become a great musician someday." Elena was surprised. Why would this man want to help them for free? "Maria is special," Senor Rodriguez explained. "In my many years of teaching, I have only met 2 or 3 students with her natural ability. She hears music in a way that most people cannot understand. It would be wrong to let such a gift go to waste." Elena thought about it. She wanted the best for Maria, but she was also worried. What if Maria got her hopes up and then was disappointed? What if she was not as good as Senor Rodriguez thought? But when Elena looked at how happy Maria was when she talked about the piano, she knew what she had to do. "If you really think she has talent," Elena said, "then yes, but only if you are sure." Senor Rodriguez smiled. "I am very sure," he said. "Maria is going to surprise everyone." That night, Elena told Maria about Senor Rodriguez's offer. Maria was so excited that she could not sleep. She lay in bed imagining all the beautiful music she would learn to play. Neither Elena nor Maria knew that this moment would change their lives forever. The little blind girl who played piano in a community center was about to begin a journey that would take her far beyond the small streets of Barcelona. But for now, Maria was just happy to have found something she loved. Music had become her light in a world of darkness, and she was ready to follow wherever it would lead her. 3 years had passed since Senor Rodriguez began teaching Maria. The little girl had grown into a young woman of 18, and her talent had grown with her. Every day after school, she would walk to Senor Rodriguez's small apartment where he had an old piano waiting for her. The lessons were unlike anything Maria had imagined. Senor Rodriguez taught her about rhythm and melody, about how music could tell stories and share emotions. He played recordings of great pianists from around the world, and Maria would listen with her eyes closed, absorbing every note. "Music is a language," Senor Rodriguez would tell her. "And you, Maria, are becoming fluent in this language." Maria's fingers had grown strong and quick. She could now play pieces that challenged even advanced students. But what made her special was not just her technical skill. When Maria played, she put her whole heart into the music. People who heard her play said it was like she was speaking to them through the piano. Word about Maria's talent began to spread through Barcelona. People would come to the community center just to hear her play. Local newspapers wrote stories about the miracle pianist who had learned to play without ever seeing a sheet of music. Maria started performing at small events around the city. She played at weddings, church services, and community celebrations. People would put money in a hat, and Maria would give it all to Elena to help with the bakery expenses. Elena was proud of her granddaughter, but she was also worried. Maria spent so much time practicing that she barely had time for anything else. She had few friends her own age, and Elena feared that Maria was missing out on normal teenage experiences. "Maria," Elena said one evening, "maybe you should take a break from music sometimes. You could go to movies with other girls your age or just walk around the city." Maria looked up from the piano where she was practicing. "But Grandma, I love music. This is what makes me happy." Elena sighed. She wanted Maria to be happy, but she also wanted her to have a normal life. Little did she know that Maria's life was about to become anything but normal. One day, Senor Rodriguez came to the bakery with exciting news. His hands were shaking as he held a letter. "Maria," he said, "the Barcelona Music Conservatory is offering a scholarship competition. It's a full scholarship for 4 years of study. This could be your chance to become a professional musician." Maria's heart started beating fast. The Barcelona Music Conservatory was one of the most respected music schools in Europe. Students from all over the world came to study there. "But Senor Rodriguez," Maria said, "I cannot read music. I have never had formal training like other students." "That does not matter," Senor Rodriguez replied. "The audition is a performance. You will play a piece of your choice. Your talent will speak for itself." Elena was worried. What if she is not accepted? What if she gets her hopes up for nothing? Senor Rodriguez looked at Elena seriously. "There's always a risk when we chase our dreams, but Maria has something special. She has a gift that cannot be taught. If she does not try, she will always wonder what might have been." Maria made her decision. "I want to audition," she said firmly. The next few weeks were intense. Maria practiced for hours every day, preparing for the most important performance of her life. She chose to play Chopin's Fantaisie Impromptu, a piece that was both technically challenging and emotionally powerful. Senor Rodriguez had played this piece for her many times on old recordings. Maria had listened carefully to every note, every pause, every emotion. She had made the piece her own, adding her personal style while respecting the composer's original vision. The day of the audition arrived. Maria wore her best dress, a simple blue one that Elena had bought for special occasions. They took the bus to the conservatory, a beautiful old building with tall windows and marble floors. The waiting room was full of nervous young musicians. Maria could hear them practicing scales and running through difficult passages. Most of them had expensive instruments and sheet music covered with notes and markings. Maria sat quietly, listening to the sounds around her. She could hear the fear in some of the students' voices, the confidence in others. She tried to stay calm, but her hands were trembling slightly. "Maria Santos," a voice called out. It was her turn. Senor Rodriguez squeezed her hand. "Remember," he whispered, "play with your heart. That is what makes you special." Maria walked into the audition room. She could feel the eyes of the judges watching her. There were 5 of them sitting at a long table. The room was quiet except for the sound of her footsteps on the wooden floor. She found the piano and sat down. The bench was at the right height, and the keys felt familiar under her fingers. She took a deep breath and began to play. The first notes of the Chopin piece filled the room. Maria's fingers moved with confidence and grace. She played the fast sections with perfect precision, but it was the slow parts that truly showed her talent. When she played the gentle melodies, it was like she was telling a story of love and loss, of hope and dreams. The judges sat in silence, completely absorbed in her performance. One of them, Professor Martinez, had been teaching at the conservatory for 30 years. He had never heard a student play with such emotion and maturity. As Maria played, she forgot about everything else. She was no longer nervous or worried. She was just sharing her music with the world, the way she had been doing for years at the community center and at local events. When she finished, the room was completely silent. Maria sat with her hands on her knees, waiting for someone to speak. Finally, Professor Martinez cleared his throat. "That was extraordinary," he said. "How long have you been studying piano?" 3 years, Maria replied. The judges looked at each other in amazement. Most of the students who auditioned had been taking lessons for 10 years or more. "Who is your teacher?" another judge asked. "Senor Rodriguez," Maria said. "He teaches at the local school." Professor Martinez made some notes on his paper. "Thank you, Maria. We will contact you with our decision within 1 week." Maria stood up and walked out of the room. She had done her best. Now all she could do was wait. The week that followed was the longest of Maria's life. She tried to practice as usual, but she could not concentrate. Elena tried to keep her busy with work at the bakery, but Maria's mind was always on the audition. Finally, a letter arrived. Elena's hands shook as she opened it and read it aloud. "Dear Maria Santos," she began, "we are pleased to inform you that you have been selected to receive a full scholarship to the Barcelona Music Conservatory." Maria could not believe it. She had been accepted into one of the best music schools in Europe. Elena cried tears of joy, and Senor Rodriguez celebrated by playing Maria's favorite piece on his old piano, but the letter continued. "However, we must inform you that you will be the first blind student in the conservatory's history. Your studies will require special accommodations, and you will need to work twice as hard as other students." Maria was not worried about working hard. She had been working hard her whole life. What excited her was the chance to learn from the best teachers and to study alongside other talented musicians. The next few months flew by. Maria graduated from high school and prepared for her new life at the conservatory. Elena worried about her granddaughter living in the dormitory, but she knew it was necessary for Maria's education. When the day came for Maria to start classes, half the neighborhood came to wish her well. The little girl who had played piano in the community center was now a conservatory student with a bright future ahead of her. As Maria walked through the doors of the conservatory for her first day of classes, she felt a mixture of excitement and fear. She was about to enter a world where she would be challenged in ways she had never imagined, but she was ready. She had her talent, her determination, and the love of everyone who believed in her. Most importantly, she had her music, which had carried her this far and would carry her wherever she needed to go. The first chapter of Maria's musical journey was ending, but the real adventure was just beginning. 2 years had passed since Maria started at the Barcelona Music Conservatory. The experience had been both wonderful and challenging. She had learned more about music than she ever thought possible, but being the only blind student had not been easy. Some professors were patient and helpful. They would describe musical concepts in ways that Maria could understand without seeing. They recorded lessons for her and spent extra time making sure she understood difficult pieces, but other professors were not as kind. They seemed to think that Maria did not belong at the conservatory. They would ignore her questions or give her easier pieces to play while other students worked on more challenging music. Maria's fellow students had mixed reactions too. Some became her friends and helped her navigate the building or find her way to classes. Others whispered behind her back that she had only been accepted because the school wanted to look good for having a disabled student. Despite these challenges, Maria's talent continued to grow. She practiced for hours every day, often staying in the practice rooms until late at night. Her technique improved dramatically, and she learned to play pieces by composers she had never heard of before. Professor Martinez, who had been on her audition panel, became her main teacher. He was a stern man but fair, and he pushed Maria to reach her full potential. "You have natural talent," he told her one day after a particularly difficult lesson. "But talent alone is not enough. You must work harder than everyone else to prove that you belong here." Maria took his words to heart. She knew that some people doubted her abilities, and she was determined to prove them wrong. By her second year, Maria was performing in student recitals and competitions. She won several awards and earned the respect of most of her classmates. Her reputation as a serious musician was growing. One day, Professor Martinez called Maria to his office. He had exciting news. "Maria," he said, "you have been selected to represent the conservatory at the European Young Artists Gala in Vienna. This is a huge honor. Only the most promising students from across Europe are invited to perform." Maria could hardly believe it. The European Young Artists Gala was one of the most prestigious events for young classical musicians. It was held in Vienna's famous Musikverein concert hall, where the greatest musicians in history had performed. The gala attracts attention from record companies, concert promoters, and music critics, Professor Martinez explained. This could be the beginning of your professional career. Maria was excited but also nervous. She would be performing alongside students from the top music schools in Europe. The competition would be fierce and the pressure would be enormous. What piece should I play? She asked. Professor Martinez had already thought about this. I suggest Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2, the first movement. It's one of the most demanding pieces in the classical repertoire, but I believe you're ready for it. Maria knew the piece well. She had been working on it for months. It was incredibly difficult, with fast passages that required perfect timing and technique. But it was also deeply emotional, and Maria felt she could bring something special to the performance. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of preparation. Maria practiced the concerto until she could play it perfectly. She worked with the conservatory's orchestra to prepare for the performance with full accompaniment. Elena was nervous about her granddaughter traveling to Vienna alone, but she was also proud. My little Maria is going to play with the best musicians in Europe, she told everyone at the bakery. Senor Rodriguez was equally proud. I knew from the first day I heard her play that she was special, he said. This is just the beginning. Finally, the day arrived. Maria flew to Vienna, her first time leaving Spain. The city was beautiful, with its grand architecture and rich musical history. She could feel the presence of great composers like Mozart and Beethoven, who had lived and worked there. The Musikverein was even more impressive than Maria had imagined. The concert hall was ornate and elegant, with perfect acoustics that made every note ring clearly. When Maria first sat at the concert grand piano, she felt like she was touching a piece of history. The day before the performance, there was a reception for all the participating musicians. Young artists from across Europe mingled with professors, critics, and music industry professionals. Maria felt out of place at first, but she tried to be confident. She was practicing in a small rehearsal room when she heard voices outside the door. She continued playing, focusing on a particularly difficult passage. What is this? A voice said in English with a Russian accent. Who let this girl practice here? Maria stopped playing and listened. She could hear several people entering the room. I am Victor Kozlov, the voice continued. I am performing at the gala tomorrow evening. I need this room for my rehearsal. Maria recognized the name. Victor Kozlov was a famous Russian pianist, known for his brilliant technique and his difficult personality. He was only 28 years old, but he was already considered one of the best pianists in the world. I am sorry, Maria said politely. I was just finishing my practice. I can leave if you need the room. Wait, Kozlov said. You are performing tomorrow, but you are blind. Maria felt her face grow warm. Yes, I am blind, but I can still play piano. Kozlov laughed, and Maria heard other people in the room laughing too. This is what happens when we lower our standards, he said loudly. Playing piano is about precision, about seeing the music. A blind person can never truly understand the artistry. They can only copy what they hear. The words hit Maria like a physical blow. She had heard similar things before, but never from someone so famous and respected. Music is about more than just seeing, Maria said quietly, trying to keep her voice steady. Nonsense, Kozlov replied. How can you understand the composer's intentions if you cannot see the music? How can you know if your fingers are in the right position? You may be able to play simple melodies, but real classical music requires sight. Maria felt tears forming in her eyes. She had worked so hard to get to this point, and now this famous pianist was telling her that she did not belong. I have been studying classical music for years, she said. I have won competitions and scholarships. Because people feel sorry for you, Kozlov said cruelly. They give you awards not because you are truly talented, but because they want to feel good about helping a disabled person. The people in the room were uncomfortable, but no one spoke up to defend Maria. They were all impressed by Kozlov's fame and did not want to argue with him. "Let me hear you play," Kozlov said. "Play something difficult. Let us see if you can really perform at this level." Maria's hands were shaking, but she began to play the opening of the Rachmaninoff concerto. She made it through the first few pages, but her confidence was shattered. The notes came out correctly, but the emotion was gone. "See?" Kozlov said when she finished. "Technical ability, but no real understanding, no passion. This is what I mean. You can play the notes, but you cannot make music." Maria stood up from the piano bench. She could not bear to stay in the room any longer. As she walked toward the door, she heard Kozlov talking to the others. "I feel sorry for her," he said. "Someone should have told her long ago that she is not cut out for this. It is cruel to let her believe she can compete with real musicians." Maria found her way back to her hotel room and cried for hours. All her doubts came flooding back. Maybe Kozlov was right. Maybe she had been fooling herself all these years. Maybe she was just a novelty act. Someone people applauded out of pity rather than respect. She thought about calling Professor Martinez or Elena, but she was too embarrassed. She had worked so hard to get to this point, and now she felt like a fraud. That night, Maria barely slept. She kept hearing Kozlov's words over and over in her mind. She thought about backing out of the performance, making up an excuse about being sick, but as she lay in bed, she also thought about her journey. She remembered the little girl who had first touched the piano keys at the community center. She thought about Senor Rodriguez's faith in her, and Elena's sacrifices to support her dreams. She thought about all the people who had believed in her along the way. They had not helped her out of pity. They had seen something real in her music. Something that went beyond technical skill. By morning, Maria had made her decision. She would not let Viktor Kozlov's cruel words destroy her dreams. She would perform that evening, and she would play with all the passion and emotion that had brought her this far. She did not know it yet, but this moment of humiliation would become the turning point of her career. Sometimes the greatest triumphs come from the deepest pain, and Maria was about to discover just how powerful her music could be when it came from the heart. The stage was set for a confrontation that would change everything. Maria had been knocked down, but she was not defeated. The real test was still to come. The day of the European Young Artists Gala arrived with gray skies and a cold wind blowing through Vienna. Maria woke up early in her hotel room, her stomach tight with nerves. She had barely eaten anything for breakfast, but she forced herself to have some tea and toast. The morning was spent in final preparations. Maria went to the Musikverein for one last rehearsal with the orchestra. The conductor, Maestro Weber, was a kind man who had worked with many young soloists over the years. "Remember, Maria," he said before they began, "this is your moment. Trust your instincts and let the music flow through you." The rehearsal went well. The orchestra members were professional and supportive. They had heard about Maria's talent and were curious to see what she could do. As they played through the concerto, Maria felt her confidence returning slightly, but she could not forget Viktor Kozlov's words from the day before. Every time she made a small mistake or hesitated, she heard his voice saying that she was not good enough. After rehearsal, Maria had lunch with her accompanist, a young woman named Sarah, who had been assigned to help her navigate the venue. Sarah had noticed that Maria seemed troubled. "Are you nervous about tonight?" Sarah asked. Maria nodded. "Yesterday I met Viktor Kozlov. He said some things that made me doubt myself." Sarah's expression changed. "What kind of things?" Maria told her about the encounter in the practice room. Sarah listened with growing anger. "That man is known for being cruel," Sarah said. "He thinks he is better than everyone else. Do not let him get in your head. You earned your place here through your talent, not through pity." Maria wanted to believe her, but the doubt was still there. She spent the afternoon in her hotel room, trying to rest but unable to sleep. She went over the concerto in her mind, playing every note mentally. As evening approached, Maria put on her concert dress. It was a simple black gown that Elena had helped her choose. It was elegant but not flashy. Perfect for a serious musical performance, she arrived at the Musikverein 2 hours before the concert. The backstage area was busy with musicians warming up, tuning instruments, and dealing with last-minute nerves. Maria found a quiet corner where she could prepare mentally. The concert hall was filling up with audience members. There were music critics from major newspapers, talent scouts from record companies, and classical music lovers from around the world. The pressure was enormous. Maria was the fifth performer of the evening. She listened from backstage as the other young artists performed. They were all excellent, playing difficult pieces with skill and confidence. Her nerves grew worse with each performance. Finally, it was time. Maria heard the announcer's voice over the sound system. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Maria Santos from Barcelona, Spain, performing the first movement of Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2 in C minor." Sarah guided Maria to the stage entrance. "You can do this," she whispered. "Just play from your heart." Maria walked onto the stage, guided by the sound of applause. The stage lights were bright, but of course she could not see them. What she could feel was the energy of the packed concert hall. Over 1,500 people were watching her. She made her way to the piano bench and sat down. The magnificent concert grand piano was perfectly tuned and ready. Maria adjusted the bench to the right height and placed her hands on her knees. The concert hall grew quiet as people settled into their seats. Maria could sense the expectation in the air. In the front row, she could hear Viktor Kozlov's voice as he talked quietly to someone next to him. "This should be interesting," she heard him say with a laugh. "Let us see if she can handle the pressure." The conductor raised his baton, and the orchestra began the opening of the concerto. The music started softly, with the strings playing a gentle melody. Maria knew every note by heart. She had listened to this piece hundreds of times and had practiced it until it was part of her soul. As the orchestra played, Maria thought about her journey. She remembered the little girl who had first discovered the piano at the community center. She thought about Elena working long hours at the bakery to support her dreams. She remembered Sena Rodriguez's patient teaching and Professor Martinez's high expectations. Most of all, she thought about why she loved music so much. It was not about technical perfection or impressing other people. Music was her way of expressing emotions that had no words. It was her light in a world of darkness. The orchestra reached the point where the piano was supposed to enter. Maria lifted her hands and placed them on the keys. This was it. This was her moment. The first notes that came from the piano were soft and precise. Maria played the opening theme with perfect control, but there was something else in the music. There was a depth of feeling that went beyond technical skill. As she continued to play, Maria felt something happening that she had never experienced before. The music seemed to be playing itself through her fingers. She was not thinking about technique or mistakes. She was simply letting the music flow. The audience sensed it too. The restless shifting and quiet coughing that usually happened during performances stopped. Everyone was focused on the young woman at the piano. Maria played the fast, difficult passages with incredible speed and accuracy. Her fingers danced across the keys like they were weightless. But it was not just the technical perfection that impressed people. It was the emotion in every note. When she played the beautiful, sad melody in the middle of the movement, people in the audience felt tears in their eyes. Maria was telling a story through the music, a story of struggle and hope, of dreams that seemed impossible but refused to die. The orchestra followed her lead perfectly. The musicians were inspired by her performance and played with more passion than they had in months. The conductor watched in amazement as Maria brought out colors in the music that he had never noticed before. In the front row, Viktor Kozlov's expression had changed completely. When Maria first started playing, he had been smiling smugly, waiting for her to make mistakes. But as the performance continued, his smile faded. He sat forward in his seat, listening intently. By the middle of the movement, Kozlov was staring at Maria with his mouth slightly open. He had never heard anyone play this piece with such emotional depth. The technical perfection was incredible, But it was the musical understanding that truly amazed him. Maria reached the climax of the movement, where the piano and orchestra play together in a powerful, dramatic section. She played with such intensity that the entire concert hall seemed to vibrate with the music. Her whole body moved with the rhythm. Her face showed every emotion in the music. She was not just playing the piano. She was living the music. As the movement neared its end, Maria played the final, quiet passages with incredible tenderness. The last few notes faded away like a whisper, leaving the concert hall in complete silence. For a moment, nobody moved. The audience sat in stunned silence, absorbing what they had just heard. Even the orchestra members sat motionless, their instruments still in their hands. Maria remained at the piano, her hands still on the keys. She could feel the silence in the hall, and for a terrifying moment, she wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. Then, slowly, someone in the audience started to applaud. The sound was soft at first, but it quickly grew. Within seconds, the entire concert hall erupted in applause. People jumped to their feet, clapping and shouting. Many were crying openly. The orchestra members put down their instruments and applauded. Along with the audience. Maria stood up from the piano bench, overwhelmed by the response. She had never heard applause like this before. It went on, wave after wave of appreciation and admiration. In the front row, Viktor Kozlov was on his feet, applauding as enthusiastically as anyone. The expression on his face was one of complete shock and admiration. He had been wrong about Maria, terribly wrong. The applause continued for several minutes. People shouted, "Bravo!" in multiple languages. Some threw flowers onto the stage. Maria stood at the piano, tears streaming down her face, overwhelmed by the response. Finally, the applause began to fade. Maria walked to the front of the stage and bowed deeply. The audience erupted again, and she had to bow several more times before they would let her leave. As she walked off the stage, Maria knew that something had changed forever. She had not just played a piano concerto. She had shared her soul with the world. And the world had responded with love and appreciation. The cruel words that Viktor Kozlov had spoken the day before now seemed like they had happened to someone else. Maria had proved that talent and passion could overcome any obstacle, even the doubts of famous critics. But the evening was not over yet. As Maria walked backstage, she was surrounded by people congratulating her. Musicians, critics, and music industry professionals all wanted to meet her and express their admiration. "That was the most beautiful performance I have heard in years," said one elderly critic who had been reviewing classical music for 30 years. "You have a recording contract waiting for you whenever you want it," said a representative from a major record label. Maria was overwhelmed by all the attention. She had never imagined that her performance would create such a strong reaction. People were treating her like a star, not like the disabled girl who some thought did not belong. The plane ride back to Barcelona felt like a dream to Maria. She held the morning newspapers in her lap, though she could not read them herself. Sarah, who had stayed an extra day to help her, read the reviews aloud. "Listen to this one from the Vienna Classical Music Review," Sarah said excitedly. "The performance by Maria Santos was nothing short of miraculous. In 40 years of music criticism, I have never heard a more moving interpretation of Rachmaninoff's Second Piano Concerto." "And this one from the International Arts Tribune," Sarah continued. "Santos proved that true artistry transcends physical limitations. Her performance was a masterclass in emotional expression through music." Maria listened to review after review, each one more positive than the last. The critics were calling her performance extraordinary, life-changing, and the highlight of the gala. But what meant the most to Maria was a personal note that had been delivered to her hotel room that morning. It was from Viktor Kozlov, written in his own handwriting. "Dear Maria," Sarah read aloud, "I have been thinking about your performance all night. You have changed my understanding of what it means to be a musician. I hope you will accept my invitation to perform with me at the Moscow Conservatory next month. The world needs to hear your music. With deepest respect, Viktor Kozlov." When the plane landed in Barcelona, Maria was surprised to find a crowd waiting for her at the airport. News of her triumph in Vienna had spread quickly, and local reporters wanted to interview her. "Maria! Maria!" they called out. "How does it feel to be Barcelona's newest musical star?" Maria was overwhelmed by the attention. She had left Barcelona as a conservatory student, but she was returning as an international sensation. Elena was waiting for her at the airport, tears streaming down her face. She had heard about the performance on the radio and had been crying with joy all morning. "My little Maria," Elena said, hugging her granddaughter tightly, "I am so proud of you. The whole neighborhood is talking about you." Senna Rodriguez was there too, beaming with pride. "I knew this day would come," he said. "From the moment I first heard you play, I knew you were special." The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Maria's phone rang constantly with offers from concert promoters, record companies, and music festivals around the world. Everyone wanted to work with the young pianist who had taken Vienna by storm. Professor Martinez from the conservatory was thrilled with the attention Maria was bringing to the school. "You have put our conservatory on the international map," he told her. "We are honored to have you as our student." But Maria was most happy to be back in her simple neighborhood. She visited the community center where she had first discovered the piano, and the children there treated her like a celebrity. "Play for us, Maria," they begged. "Play the piece you played in Vienna." Maria sat down at the old, scratched piano where her journey had begun. As she played the opening notes of the Rachmaninoff concerto, she remembered the little girl who had first touched these keys years ago. The children listened in wonder, not fully understanding the technical brilliance of what they were hearing, but feeling the emotion in every note. When Maria finished, they applauded with the same enthusiasm as the sophisticated audience in Vienna. "You see," Elena said to Senna Rodriguez as they watched, "success has not changed her. She is still our Maria." Over the following weeks, Maria had to make some difficult decisions about her future. She had offers to study with famous teachers in New York, London, and Moscow. Concert halls around the world wanted to book her for performances, but Maria also wanted to finish her education at the Barcelona Conservatory. She felt a loyalty to the school that had given her a chance, and to Professor Martinez, who had believed in her. After much thought, she decided to complete her studies in Barcelona while also beginning her professional career. She would perform in important concerts during school breaks and summers. Her first major concert after Vienna was at the Palau de la Música Catalana, Barcelona's most prestigious concert hall. The performance was sold out, with people traveling from across Spain to hear her play. Elena and Senna Rodriguez sat in the front row, watching with pride as Maria performed for her home audience. She played the same Rachmaninoff concerto that had made her famous, but she also included pieces by Spanish composers to honor her heritage. The audience response was just as overwhelming as it had been in Vienna. People stood and cheered for 10 minutes after she finished. Maria had become Barcelona's musical ambassador to the world. As her reputation grew, Maria began to receive invitations to perform with the world's greatest orchestras. She played with the Berlin Philharmonic, the London Symphony, and the New York Philharmonic. Each performance was met with critical acclaim and standing ovations, but Maria never forgot where she came from. She regularly returned to the community center to play for local children. She established a scholarship fund to help other young musicians from poor families pursue their dreams. She also worked with organizations that help disabled children discover their talents. Maria wanted to show them that physical limitations did not have to limit their dreams. 1 year after her triumph in Vienna, Maria received an invitation that made her especially happy. The Vienna Philharmonic wanted her to perform as their soloist in a special concert celebrating young artists. When she returned to the Musikverein, Maria was greeted as a star. The same hall where she had once been humiliated was now treating her as one of the world's great pianists. Viktor Kozlov was there for the concert, and he had kept his promise to become one of Maria's biggest supporters. He introduced her to important people in the music world and helped arrange concerts for her in Russia. "You have taught me more about music than anyone else," he told her before the performance. I will always be grateful for that. The concert was another triumph. Maria played not just the Rachmaninoff concerto, but also a new piece that had been written especially for her by a famous composer. The audience included many of the same people who had witnessed her breakthrough performance a year earlier. As she played, Maria thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment. She remembered the doubt and fear she had felt after Kozlov's cruel words. She remembered the moment when she had decided to perform despite her shattered confidence. Most of all, she remembered the silence that had followed her performance. That moment when the entire concert hall had been stunned into complete quiet, before erupting in applause. That silence had been the turning point. It was the moment when her music had spoken louder than any words, when her talent had proved itself beyond any doubt. After the concert, Maria was surrounded by admirers and critics. But she found herself thinking about the small community center in Barcelona where her journey had begun. Later that evening she called Elena from her hotel room. "Grandma," she said, "I want to come home soon. I want to play for the children at the community center again." Elena laughed. "You are famous all over the world now, Maria, but you will always be my little girl who loves to play piano." "That is all I ever wanted to be," Maria replied. "Everything else is just extra." As she hung up the phone, Maria reflected on how much her life had changed. She had achieved fame and success beyond her wildest dreams. Critics called her one of the most important pianists of her generation. She had recording contracts and concert bookings for years into the future, but the most important thing had not changed at all. She was still the same girl who had found magic in the sound of piano keys, who had discovered that music could express emotions that had no words, the cruel words that had once hurt her so deeply had become the catalyst for her greatest triumph. Viktor Kozlov's attempt to destroy her confidence had instead pushed her to find a deeper level of artistry. Maria had learned that sometimes the greatest successes come from the deepest pain. The humiliation she had experienced had driven her to reach inside herself and find reserves of talent and emotion she had never known existed. Now, as she looked toward the future, Maria knew that her journey was far from over. She had many more concerts to perform, many more audiences to move with her music, but she also knew that no matter how famous she became, she would never forget the lesson she had learned in Vienna. True artistry comes from the heart, not from the eyes. Music is about feeling, not seeing. The blind girl who had once been ridiculed by a famous pianist had indeed silenced the world, not with anger or revenge, but with the pure power of her music. And in doing so, she had proved that talent, determination, and heart could overcome any obstacle. Maria Santos had found her voice, and the world would never be the same.